want you to think with me this morning as we continue our series in the Sermon on the Mount in looking at Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 down to verse 37 is where we are going to spend some time looking and studying together here this morning. Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 down to verse 37. It says here, "Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one." So I want you to think this morning, the question is, what about oaths? Are we allowed to swear an oath? We may ask that question here as we think about this lesson this morning. Some have taken oath swearing in the wrong perspective. Some have gone as far as wanting to make an oath for anything. But the Scriptures kind of teach us something a little different, does it not? When I stand up, some people will say, well, you stand up in court, and what do they ask you before you give testimony? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? They'll ask that question. You say, yes, I do swear, or yes, are we allowed to do such things? Is that okay to do those? It's an interesting one of this lesson. When you look at all the different six of these, you've heard it was said, or you've heard from old it was said. Jesus speaks about and compares to these different things here. And when you look here, here is something you've heard it from old, kind of heard from perspective, heard from other people on this. The Jews were taking advantage of these oaths. They were getting to the point of making things frivolous and in danger even of making God common with the way that they were swearing by different things. So I want you to think with me as we look at this here this morning, kind of examining the Scriptures, understanding what is said here, and being able to make some application of this. So the first thing I want you to think is, can I swear by or make an oath? There's an interesting take as we look at this here, is that in the Old Testament, there's no mentioning of this. In this particular one, Jesus said there in verse 33, you have heard that it was said of old. So as you think about it with me, they had been taught about oaths, though. Look back in the Old Testament with me, just real quick. Let's look at some different things here. They were not to swear by God's name falsely. Look over in Leviticus with me, first of all. Leviticus chapter 19. And look at verse 12 with me. Leviticus 19, verse 12. It says here again, you shall not swear by my name falsely. Nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. When we look at what they've been taught by oaths, first of all is, don't swear by God's name falsely. When they were making these promises, and they were saying by God, or any type of way of mentioning God, don't do it falsely. When we talk about making these oaths under the old covenant, under the old law, we look at these and said, don't swear by my name falsely. In fact, when you make an oath or a vow, however you want to look at it, you keep the vow. You keep the oath. You honor what you said you were going to do or perform. If you look over in Numbers chapter 30 with me. Numbers chapter 30, and looking at verse 2. Numbers chapter 30, looking at verse 2. It says here, if a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. One of the things we'll talk about that more in a little bit, is reputation or integrity. When you make a vow, when you make an oath, when you swear by, if you're swearing by God's name, making a vow in this way, you keep what you vow. You keep what you honor. You keep the promise that you made. And also with that, when you make a promise, when you make these things, don't delay it. Don't delay what you vow, but honor what you have made in a commitment to others or to God. If you look over in Deuteronomy with me, Deuteronomy chapter 23, and look at verse 21 down to verse 23. Deuteronomy chapter 23, beginning with verse 21. It says here, "And when you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and it would be sin to you. But if you abstain from vowing, it shall not be sin to you. That which has gone from your lips you shall keep and perform. For you voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you promised with your mouth." Now, as we take note of this, looking at this, again, we don't delay what we vow. We honor what we vow, what we're promising to do or promising to perform, whatever it may be. Don't delay in what you pay. Notice in each of these, a vow or oath was made. But I want you to think, what Jesus was concerned about with the Jews is that where the problem line was, their heart was not right. Look over in the New Testament with me. We jump ahead in Matthew. And you jump all the way to Matthew chapter 23, verse 16 and 17 there. Matthew chapter 23, verse 16 and verse 17. Matthew 23, verse 16 and verse 17. It says here, "Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold?" And when you look at it here, they were, we may have made an oath on the temple, but it's really not that necessary. But the gold of the temple, now when we make an oath on that, we've got to be able to honor such things. If you make an oath, either way, if you're swearing by something, should you not honor what you said? They even felt at a point where if we do it by the gold or the temple itself, we're not mentioning God in our oath, and therefore we're not obliged to fulfill what we've said. The oath that they made became more of a frivolous thing, and that was another problem. There again, as we read there in Matthew chapter 5, verse 34, down to verse 36, "But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black." Making statements like "by thy life" or "by thy head," they're making these different statements and making it more frivolous, trying to make it so common of a thing. But Christ here deals with both Moses' law and Jewish tradition. That's what they were trying to get at. They were trying to use some of their tradition to justify why they didn't have to oblige or keep the oaths they committed, or that they swore by. So I want you to think with me a little bit, just answering this first question. Can we make an oath, or can we swear by things today? And the answer is yes. One can still, as we look at this, as we consider verse 37, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. What you say, what you commit to, either yes or no, honor those things. Keep your vow. Keep your oath. Better to vow to pay, or it's better to not vow and pay than vow and not pay. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 3 and 4. Whatever you promise, keep it. And there are things that we make oaths, contracts, or vows. I just want to name just a couple of different examples. A marriage vow. Husbands and wives, when they commit to, we were talking about marriage and divorce last week. When we commit to one another in marriage, is that not vows? Are we not making commitments to one another? Yes. Are we to honor those things? Yes. A judiciary oath. Again, when someone is standing before the court system and they ask you, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? You making an oath? Yes. How about a promissory note? Or a loan? Or a contract? Those are things that we kind of write down and we agree to, right? I got a car, I got a house that I'm paying on. If I decided I didn't want to continue paying those things, what's going to happen? Whatever it's going to be, whether the house, the car, someone might come out here and take my car. I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but I don't recommend doing that. But all these different things, if someone may be loaning you some money and you sit there and, okay, I'm going to sign a contract, I want to pay it back. I'll pay it back, sometimes people charge interest on it. You sign that agreement. All these different things. We start talking about, there are different contracts, different types of oaths that we are honoring, that we are saying, and in different capacities. But again, when we say this, when we look at this, Jesus teaches there in Matthew 5, verse 37, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. If you're not willing to honor those things, then say no to it. If you're going, if you're going to say yes, honor that commitment, honor those contracts. What I want you to think as well with me this morning is that God is in our oaths and vows that we make. Now, as you look here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 34 down to verse 36, there are 4 different types of oaths that are mentioned here. You have the spiritual, you have the natural, you have the national, and you got personal. When you look at verse 34 down to verse 36, I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven. There's our spiritual. The natural, for by earth. By earth. By national, mentions even a certain city with Jerusalem. And then also the 4th one, personal, our own head, our own life. An oath, I want you to think with me. When you make an oath, by heaven, God's involved because it's His throne. Matthew 23, verse 22. If you'll turn there with me real quick. Matthew chapter 23, verse 22. And he who swears by heaven, swears by it, and by Him who dwells in it. If someone were to make an oath, and in the case of what the Jews were doing here by heaven, God is involved because it's His throne. An oath made by earth, the natural, we look at the physical earth. God's involved because the earth is mentioned as His footstool. If you go back to Isaiah chapter 66, Isaiah 66, verse 1. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 1. It says here, Isaiah 66, verse 1, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. Where is the house you will build me? Where is the place of my rest? If someone were to make this, I'm going to make an oath, swear by earth, God's involved because it's His footstool. When we look at by Jerusalem, in this case, the national side of things, God's involved. In this particular case, we look at this, it's His own special city with His special people. Go back even further in the Old Testament to the book of Psalm, in Psalm 48. So there's Psalm 48. Psalm 48. It says here, Psalm 48, great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God in His holy mountain. Beautiful in elevation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is in her palaces. He is known as her refuge. For behold, the kings assembled. They passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled. They hastened away. Fear took hold of them there, and pain, as of a woman in birth pains. As when you break the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. As we heard, so we have seen, in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our God, God will establish it forever. We have thought, O God, on your loving kindness in the midst of your temple, according to your name, O God. So is your praise to the ends of the earth. Your right hand is full of righteousness. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad because of your judgments. Walk about Zion. Go all around her. Count her towers. Mark well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces, that you may tell it to the generation following. For this is God. Our God forever and ever. He will be our God even to death. If we swear by country, God, in this case, God blessed Jerusalem. God has blessed you and I as well as we see this. He has blessed all nations of earth to be able to seek Him. We read over in Acts 17, He has blessed all nations that we might seek Him, that we may know Him, that we may follow, that we may hope for Him. God's involved. And personal, if we're going to swear by our own life or our own head, God's involved. Who created man in the beginning? Genesis 2 verse 7. He took, who's He? God. Took from the dust of the ground, formed it, and breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. When we look at all the different things that are used, and all the different things that the Jews had tried to, we're going to swear by this and this, God is in the center of it all. God is involved in each of these different things. To swear falsely by anything is to lie against God. When we're making an oath or we're making some sort of promise in this way, we are lying against God if we do not fulfill such things. And what do we read? Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16 down to verse 19. There are things that God hates. We've talked about this in this series so far. He hates people, the hands that shed innocent blood. He hates those that sow discord and try to show anger towards one another. What else do we see there? He hates a lying tongue. He hates a false witness. God does not approve of such things. When we swear falsely, when we make an oath falsely, we are lying against God. I want you to think about, there it is. There's one example that may come to your mind already, and we want to talk about her just for a moment. That's Hannah. Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and verse 11. If you turn there with me. She is upset. She has got tears of sadness. She has not been able to give a son to her husband. And what do we read in verse 11? In all the different sorrow that she goes to God and prays. And she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. She makes a vow to God. She says, I would love to have a child. I would have a male child, and that child I will give him to serve you. She made a commitment to God. God blesses her with a child. And we see once the child was weaned, we see that the child went to the temple and he was taken there to be able to begin working, to begin living there, to understand the service that he was going to be involved with in serving God. Hannah makes a vow, a commitment, and demonstrates understanding as well that God is in the center of it all, but also she honored what she had made a commitment to, and also did not delay in giving her child to the Lord to be able to serve all the days of his life. Samuel was a very blessed man to be able to serve in the work of God. There's some principles when you think about it with me this morning. Some different principles I want you to think about when it comes to us making commitments, making promises. First of all, I want you to think about is honesty. When you're making a commitment, we are to be honest in those things. Again, if we're going to commit to something, we should honor that commitment, whatever it may be. Look over in Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. It says there, therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. We live in the world. We live in this world, and the world, what is the world? The world needs to understand honesty. There's a lot of lies being said, unfortunately. But as we think about ourselves, we're to speak truth to our neighbor. And when it comes to, again, the principles in making these different oaths, honesty. If we're going to commit to something, commit to it. It's better to not vow and repay versus, or better to vow and pay rather than vow and not pay. I got that wrong earlier. I apologize. If you can't commit to something, you can say no. When it comes to God, God wants commitment. And He wants us to be fully committed to Him. He doesn't want us to commit and then turn away from Him. He wants us to commit and be faithful to Him always. When we make a promise, it's better to be able to understand that we're to vow it and keep it. When we think about the idea of reverence, there's that respect, that awe that we give to God. Over in, going back to the book of Psalm again, this time in Psalm 4. Psalm 4. Psalm 4. It says here, hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved in my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. How long, O you sons of men, will you turn my glory to shame? How long will you love worthlessness and seeking falsehood? But know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear him when I call him. Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us any good? Lord, lift up the light of your countenance upon us. You have put gladness in my heart, more than in the season that their grain and wine increase. I will both lie down in peace and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. There's respect, there's awe for God. We talk about that word reverence. Paul says over in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, to live is Christ. He is looking to serve. He understands the respect that God deserves through Jesus Christ. That we're to continue to give our life to God. There's reverence, respect, and being able to give that to God. There's perseverance. Perseverance in the things that we say. Look over in James chapter 5, verse 11 and verse 12. James chapter 5, verse 11 and verse 12. James chapter 5, verse 11 and verse 12. We read here, indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job, and seen the end intended by the Lord. The Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. We as individuals must be people of endurance. We have to trudge through things at times when it's not even the most desirable. We make commitments. And we've made commitments to God. If you're a Christian here this morning, you've made a commitment to God. And God wants us to continue in honoring that commitment. We said, yes, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. We've confessed with our own mouth that Jesus is Lord. We've put on Christ in baptism. We've desired to live a new life, and that takes perseverance. Honor what you have committed. Honor what you have vowed. One more I want you to think about is integrity. You know, Job is mentioned there in James 5, verse 11, about his perseverance. He was a man of integrity. God spoke highly of Job. Spoke highly of him when he faced the obstacles and remained faithful to God. When his friends turned on him, he persevered through it. Yes, there were times where he might have made some choice that he didn't like, but he showed integrity in wanting to serve God. Back in our text in Matthew 5, verse 37, it also says, but let your yes be yes and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one. We like to be able to have our word be trusted. How do you achieve that? You honor what you've committed to. There's integrity, the high moral standard of things. People of good reputation. You've heard people probably mention that before. A person of good reputation. You can count on any, whatever he or she said was true. They built up that good reputation. We read back in the Old Testament about how a good name is better than all the gold. A good reputation. Integrity. Let your yes and no be sufficient. Or be people of good reputation. Jesus teaches us some interesting things here when it comes to the principles of what the Jews were doing with oaths. We can see and understand that there are some things that we show promise and we're to keep and honor today. And there are principles in our desire to be honest, reverent, perseverant, having a people being of good reputation, of integrity. Those are signs of a Christian as well. We need to fully commit ourselves to God. I selected number 348 as our invitation song, Almost Persuaded. When it comes to God, when it comes to His ways, we're to fully commit ourselves to Him. This song reminds us, as the Scriptures do, that if we are almost persuaded, we can still be lost. If we will commit ourselves to God by putting on Christ in baptism, by being a Christian, we'll be glad to be able to help you in those endeavors this morning. And if you have a desire and you want to make your life right with God, do it now. Don't be almost persuaded, but fully persuaded in the Scripture, in the gospel message that brings salvation. If we can help you in showing that and expressing that commitment this morning by putting on Christ's baptism, or maybe you've not been faithful to God and you need to turn back to God this morning, we'll be glad to help you. Glad to pray with you. Be glad to encourage you. If you need some prayers or encouragement to continue to live faithful, we'll be glad to help you in those matters also. Whatever it may be, as we're saying this invitation, if there's anyone that is subject to the invitation to make their life right with God, we urge and plead with you to make your life right with God. And do it now all together while we stand.